You're
Hello.
so pretty.
Oh, thank you. You decided to look like somebody today.
I know. I just saw you looking like somebody, looking so gorgeous
Thank.
on your
I,
Instagram.
I know. I'm trying to put out some content for you. I know you want me to kind of get out there, so
Hey,
I'm
hey,
trying.
listen, I'm all about it. So, so what are we talking about today?
So today we are talking about basically family expectations, community expectations when it comes to your eating, and how this plays such a big part in how we choose to eat and how we're treated when we choose to make certain changes in our life, how we choose to feed our children, and all the naysayers and the comments and the pressure to conform and all of these sorts of things.
Girl, so what was so crazy when you said this, it
Uh-huh.
is the exact thing that got me started with this in the first place. I
Uh-huh.
think I told you that before when I first made my sugar detox
Mhm.
lecture. It was because of pressure from other people. It was because I kept getting the nasty looks because of how I fed my kids, and people always made fun of me. Because I didn't have things like cereal or juice in my house. And so, yeah, it's so real. Like the pressure from other people. Um, and then just sort of the like side eyes that you get, like, oh, she's healthy. Like it's a negative. Yeah, I don't know what that is. That's a cultural thing. I don't know if that happens across cultural lines, but it definitely happens with a fierce intensity. So I don't know. What made you want to talk about
Well,
it?
because I was having a conversation with someone, and he's from New Orleans, and he was talking about when he comes out here, it's easier. He's eating clean and feeling good, but then he goes back home,
Um,
and there's all of this like cultural food and the sweets and the alcohol and all this sort of thing that it's kind of almost like this pressure to partake in. And
mhm.
so not really being able to maintain the same level of healthy eating and lifestyle in that environment
Yeah.
as much as he desires to, it's just the environment that
Yeah.
he's in. It makes it very difficult to do so. And I was like, we need to talk about this because it's so real. Because I
Yeah.
know even for me growing up, I always ate really weird. I was very picky. If I looked at it and I didn't want it, I'm not going to eat it.
Mhm.
So I didn't eat a lot of meat. I didn't eat a lot of fried foods. And it became this kind of running joke in my
Mhm.
family. Like, Carmita, you need to give your girls some meat. Are they going to be
Mhm.
able to eat meat today?
Yeah.
Or I also went to this private school. So I was kind of seen as uppity. You're acting
Mhm.
white.
Yeah.
You need to eat black food.
Mhm.
And even so recently as last year, when I say this very delicately, okay,
It's a
I'm
touchy
going to say
subject.
this as delicately as I can. So I'm at a family function, and I have this big plate of fruit because I am notorious for bringing my own groceries, cooking, bring my own little. This is my plate.
Mhm.
Let me eat how I want to eat, right? So I'm eating this big plate of fruit, and there are little comments like, "Oh, you're eating fruit,"
Yeah.
like why? And then there was this very sarcastic remark from someone who was very obese. And I
Oh.
found it very ironic that here you are literally carrying at least 200 extra pounds, but I'm being laughed at because I'm eating a plate of fruit.
Yeah.
So it's like this crazy expectation that you have to eat black, but this is also what's harming our community and killing us and
Mhm.
causing all this disease. But it's so ingrained that people just go along with it.
So what's so funny about that is that to the point when I originally started teaching about nutrition, my first course, I think even before cocaine in my cookies, before the sugar detox course, there was another course that I taught, which was called the new normal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really about this fact that for me feeling like for me to be able to eat the way that I feel like nourishes my body, for me to be able to communicate that to people who look like me, we have to create a whole new normal, right? Because what's normal is harming us. And this expectation that we have to follow all of the rules as they've been laid out in front of us, that is the thing that was more of the barrier than finding foods that I wanted to eat. It was more of like saying, it's okay for me to eat this way. It's okay for me to not want to have fast food. It's okay for me to not want to eat everything at the cookout. And that's crazy. Well, I don't know if it's crazy, but it's just a harsh reality that for you to be able to walk in your power as a person who says, I want to make sure that I protect what I put in my body, is judged. And so I think that's a lot of the work that has to be done, is really reframing what is normal and what you want to be normal for you and the way that you feel. Like what's normal, and I tell people all this all the time because I do a whole lot of work in longevity, what's normal is for us to die around 65, 75, right? For Black men and women. That's normal. For us to have chronic disease, when we think about our grandmothers and our great-grandmothers and other family members, what's normal in this environment that we live in is diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, heart disease. All of that's normal. What I try to get people to see is that, do you really want to be normal? Mm-hmm. Right? Painful periods, infertility, cancer. All of this is normal when you allow yourself to only consider what's happening around you as your baseline for how you're supposed to behave, eat, live, etc. So I think it does require you to push some of the boundaries of what you consider to be normal. And then the problem with this as a physician and as a health coach is that then it becomes like we're being judgmental. Like we're trying to tell people to do something that's not natural. And so there's the mind piece of this, right? It's not just, I wish it were just as easy as being like, hey, listen, this is what you should eat and this is what you shouldn't eat. It's not that, it's never that simple. It's not that simple because we have to say, okay, but now we've got to work on your mindset. We've got to start to look at the world differently, look at what we want for ourselves. And that's why I always start with intention. What is it that you really want? Like, what are you trying to get? Are you just trying to lose weight? Are you trying to feel better? Are you trying to prevent an illness? Are you trying to treat a disease? Like, what are you really trying to get at? Because it's that intention that's going to allow you to open your eyes and see the world slightly different and maybe not feel like the pressure from other people is the determining factor. Like, you can make your own decisions, even if it goes against what everybody else is doing.
Yeah. Did it take you a long time to get there to where you're just like, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm living, this is how I'm feeding my kids, and the comments don't bother me anymore?
Well, for me, I'm a defiant human being. I created this course and was like, no, y'all gonna listen to me, right? So like, no, I've always been that person who was like, I don't mind being the sheep, but it's real because even with that confidence, I still was feeling some kind of way about the fact that, like, even to this day, and I tell my cousins this all the time, y'all are the reason I do what I do, is because every time you come over, don't go to Nicole's house, she's not gonna have no snacks.
Yeah.
Don't go, you know what I mean? Don't, like, you better eat before you get there. And it's true, eat before you come to my house, because if you think I'm gonna feed you some stuff that I think is harmful to you, then you've got the wrong one. But with that being said, I will also say that I have adapted. Like, I was really strict when I had my kids, and I was like taking food to the grandparents' house. And now I'm just like, listen, when you're not in my presence, you eat whatever somebody wants to feed you. I can't. I tried it that way, like, we're gluten-free and we don't eat this and we don't eat that. I tried that. That is more stress. And so I'm all about balance, right? Like, so we talk about food, we talk about stress, we talk about sleep. I'm trying to balance this thing out. So I've had to learn how to, 80% of the time, I think I make pretty good decisions. And the other 20% I leave for, the cookout where I really do want to eat some, whatever.
Yeah, I think that piece was probably difficult for me when it came to my kids, because there were certain things, like, I would want to send food. I would try, and then they'd be like, Shatila, I'm not doing this. Or they would tell me, you need to start giving them other food. You need to give them real food. That was a crazy thing I'm giving them real food, and real food, and my family would say, you need to give them real food, because when they go to school, they're not going to be eating quinoa.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're going to be eating all the whatever. So you basically need to give them bad food now. But I wanted to send food with them when they would go off, and then they would just completely disregard it. So like you said, it was really stressful, especially knowing like my granny, she would give them like ballenas. And I'm just like,
the Vienna ballenas.
Yeah.
I call them Vienna.
Vienna,
Ballenas. Oh,
yeah, the little can things. And I'm just like, can you not? I just had to block it out.
Yeah.
Like, it just didn't happen when I was there. I'm just going to pretend it never happened. I think that was probably the most stressful component. And then, too, the fact that you can't send in food to, like, the daycares.
Mm-hmm.
So they just have to eat whatever they have there. That was probably the hardest piece for me. Now, people, they just expect it. Like, my dad, he'll have a cookout or something, and he's like, well, what do you want? Because I know you're not going to eat what we have. So, you know, do you want to bring your turkey burgers? Or So I kind of train people around me in a sense. But, I mean, I'll still have my ice cream or whatever. They know that.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of part of it, too, just, like, training the people around you.
Oh, my gosh. That's such a good point, because oftentimes people are so resistant to making changes because they don't think that people will support them. And you'd be surprised. It may take a little effort, right? But I was surprised. Like, even my mom will be like, oh, so what can the kids have? And now I just say, listen, Mom, you know, feed them whatever you want. Like, I've like relinquished all responsibility, because even when I told you what to do, you did your, you know what I mean? It was like, oh, I got them the Diet Coke. I'm like, man, take my course. How about take my course, and then but otherwise, like, me having to, you know, pinpoint all the little things was a lot of work. So I guess, you know, that's why I'm all about grace, right? Because we know how challenging it can be, and you really do have to shift your mindset, and then you've got to find creative ways to get around these challenges, right? So it's going to be different for everybody. Not everybody's going to be able to tell their mother what to cook and what not to cook. Some people's mamas aren't going to have that. Not everybody is going to call you and figure out what you want. But given knowing that challenge is coming up, that's what we prepare for, right? We prepare for those challenges, and we try to think of creative ways that don't hurt other people's feelings. Maybe hurts people's feelings, but maybe not as much as it could if you just was like, I'm not eating your food, right?
Yeah.
So it's that navigating, which seems like it should be intuitive, but it's not. It's just not, because we don't live in a world where people support, you know, always your choices and the way you choose to live your life, the way you choose to eat, the way you choose to move through your health journey. And it's unfortunate, but we have to do certain things to prepare people, right?
Yeah. So, okay, then I know we've touched on it a little bit, but for you, as far as strategies are concerned, what have become like your go-to in these type situations?
Well, so there's the issue with there's the issue of people putting pressure on us, but then there's also the issue of creating environments that are safe, right? So, for example, we live in an environment where it's always going to be, people are going to be telling you what to do. So you drive down the road and there are going to be fast food restaurants that are plastered on billboards saying, this is eat this, eat this. You're going to watch TV. They're going to be like, eat this, eat this. You go into the grocery store, the things that are out front are the chips and the dip and all these things. So we also live in this environment that's constantly pushing this narrative that all of these things are food. And for me, I had to reframe it and say, okay, there are edible things that aren't actually food, right? The question is, do I want to eat things that are edible substances that aren't food? And so then I started to think, okay, so if I'm going to keep myself from eating these non-edible or these edible food-like substances, I have to create a space where I understand what real food is and how do I get it rapidly. So it's trial and error. So over the years, for example, if I want to do fast food, I come up with the specific fast food places that I'm willing to go to. If I am going to the grocery store, I have to think, okay, beforehand, what is it in this grocery store that I'm actually willing to eat? And then once I've gotten clear for myself, then it's easier to have those conversations with other people. If I'm not clear on what I'm considering to be food and what I consider to be healthy for me, then, and I try to get into these tit for tats with people, it becomes much harder because I don't have resources, because you're pushing against society, right? You're pushing against what's easy, what's accessible. So I start with me. I start by creating a household that is safe, right? I'm like sitting here with my oranges, right? This is my potato chips, right? I have certain things that I keep in my house. So then it makes it easier when people ask me, what do I want? Oh, well, I know what I would normally get. So I'm able to communicate to other people what's within the realm of things that I want to eat. But it really starts with the internal, for me it did. It starts with an internal identification of what my intention is. I want to eat healthfully. I want to be able to eat foods that are real. I eat whole foods. There are certain things that I don't eat, like I don't eat gluten. So I'm very clear on what it is that I eat. And then it's easier for me to communicate that with others.
Yeah, I would say the only thing that I would add to that, as far as like the social component of what's been game changing for me, is literally bringing my own things. And it was kind of awkward at first, kind of showing up with grocery bags to the event.
Yeah.
But then it just became, well, whatever. Like, I don't want to eat this way, so I'll just go get me some fruit, and that's what I'll have, or I'll have like instead of having like the burgers that y'all are having, now I'll kind of joke with them, and they're like, we're having burgers, and I'm like, well, is it organic?
Is it
Yeah, they're like, no, it's free. My dad, he's like, it's free. That's what it is. I'm just like, no, it's okay. I'll just go and get my own. But yeah, I mean, it was a little awkward at first, but now it's just what it is. So I think that has been like the easiest thing for me, outside of just not eating or eating something and then feeling sick, because I really didn't want that anyway. So I think I had enough of those experiences where I kind of let that pressure get to me. And I'm like, well, I'm here and I don't want to be rude, and I'm going to have what's in front of me. I used to eat it, so I just eat it now. But after you do that a few times and you literally feel sick, then you don't want to do that too many more times.
I'm so happy you brought that up, because it's such a good point about, like, I mean, I guess it's a question of like barriers, but it's also this question of like, how do you navigate being polite, or how, well, what are things that you can do to ease the discomfort when you are telling people what you don't want in your own life. And you shouldn't have to do that, but we do. And so I often tell people the easiest thing for me to tell people is I just come up with the things I don't do, right? And that way it's not like, oh, sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. I do it, because then it becomes a conversation. But if you tell people, hey, I have an allergy, I have an allergy to X, Y, and Z. Now, it's a little white lie, but it's a white lie so that it just saves everybody from the questions, because people understand that. They don't really understand, oh, I just don't eat that because I don't want to.
Yeah.
So if you say, listen, I have an allergy to, certain foods, then it makes it clear. I have a friend who doesn't eat dairy, and she goes around telling everybody that she's vegan, but then she'll be like, can I get a vegan salad? And then can you add chicken to it? And the reason she does that is because people don't know what dairy free is. Like, they always assume that dairy means no eggs, or like they just get it confused. They don't know what dairy, I'm allergic to dairy means. So she just creates a strategy that works for her. Hey, can I get the vegan? Because people understand that vegan means no dairy. And then she adds food to it. So I think it's coming up with little strategies like that, knowing how to let people down. Also, when you were saying, hey, like, I bring my own food, you can say, hey, I bring my own food because I have a lot of food sensitivities, or I have a lot of food allergies. And even I was watching a comedian, and he was making a joke about how our environment, how people are so sensitive to foods and how that's so weak or whatever. And I could go on a long diatribe about why we have more sensitivities now than we did before. But the point being is that even just saying you have food sensitivities can be offensive to some people. So I have an allergy, because people understand that. And it's unfortunate that we have to do all of that, but I think you're right. The other thing that you said that was spot on is that after people get to know you and they know, what you're about, then it doesn't go away. The taunting doesn't go away. At least it hasn't gone for me, but at least it like eases the blow. People aren't as cruel.
Yeah. Yeah, because like I said, I used to get that a lot, of that I'm acting white. I used to get that so much from my cousins, and I'm like, why? Why am I acting white? Because I don't want to eat chicken. Like, why? This is mind blowing to me, even as a child. I'm like, how did you logically come to this conclusion, to the where that really makes sense to you? And now you're really looking at me like I am this, I don't know, like rare thing that just because I don't want to eat the chicken legs.
Yeah.
It's just, my mind is gross.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just gross to me as a kid. I just didn't want to eat it. Okay. Any other thoughts?
Well,
on that?
Yeah, I think the only other thing I would say is that I think now that you're saying it, I mean, there's such a big cultural thing here that we don't like to talk about it. We don't like to talk about the pressure that we put on each other culturally to be a certain way. And it's, when you said that, it's like, oh, I'm being white. Like, so now I started meditating on camera, right? Because it's like, that's a white thing. Or I do yoga. And I mean, there's tons of, right now, I think we're in a Renaissance era particularly for Black and brown people, where we're like expanding what we consider to be normal for us, for culturally. So you see a lot more, Black people doing yoga and Black people meditating. But the reality of the situation is that we were doing a lot of these same things way before white people were doing it, right? Like, it really, trying to remember culturally that as a culture, we have behaviors that were uniquely ours. Like, my grandmother used to grow collard greens in the middle of Brooklyn, New York, in like cement. My grandfather was a farmer, right? So we have to start to reclaim that these ways of eating. My dad tells me all the time, my grandfather would not eat cooked vegetables because he was a farmer his whole life. He only ate raw vegetables. This is not a white thing, right? Like, this is something that we have been doing. We've been eating vegetables since the beginning of time. Did we put ham hocks in them all the time? We did not. You know what I mean? Like, so we have to start to reclaim our health and stop giving away our power, saying that it's somebody else, that we're taking from somebody else. 9 times out of 10, we are not taking something that is good for us from someone else. We probably did that way before they did. And I think reinvigorating our own cultural identity is really a necessary part of the healing journey, right? Because we're all on a quest, at least in what we're talking about, is being on this journey to be healthy, to be vibrant, to live well, to feel well, to be disease free. And that is not only allocated to white people. It's just, that's not a luxury that they only get. It's a luxury that we have to reclaim. And so that's one of the reasons why I was talking with someone today, and I was saying, why would I create a program that's called the Black Women's Guide, right? Like, isn't that so exclusionary? And I did it intentionally because there is this sense, I'm sorry, there's like a taxi drive like pulling up in my house, and I don't know who that is. It is, oh gosh, what was I saying? I guess it's my husband. I didn't even know he was coming home today. Sorry, just trying to figure out who's walking in my house. So culturally, we have this sense that we aren't supposed to be able to be healthy. Yeah. And I wanted to create a program that says, no, I'm talking to you. This is for you. This is your opportunity to take advantage of this opportunity to embrace your wholeness, your oneness. And what's interesting is that so many women are already looking for it. Like, people are looking for spaces where you can be comfortable and say, hey, I eat kale, right? Like, there's no taboo in saying, hey, I want to live healthily. I want to feel my best, that I don't want to have menstrual cramps, or I don't want to have fibroids, or I don't want to develop cancer, or I don't want to have diabetes like my grandmother and my great grandmother and my mother and my father. Like, I want to create a space where it was okay to say that, and so it's interesting that we're even having this conversation. It didn't even come to me that really that's the reason, because of the external pressure, this external pressure to be a certain way. And I needed to feel like I could speak to people and say, listen, I'm a Black physician, and I'm saying that this is for us too. our health, our well-being, it belongs to us too. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's pretty deep now that I think about it. I mean, because I knew, I knew why I was doing it, but it didn't
Yeah.
dawn on me that till just now when you're saying, yeah, it's a culture, we're fighting a certain, I don't want to say like a culture war, but we're fighting against a cultural norm that doesn't speak to us.
Yeah.
All the time. And that we don't even accept, that it's not even like the information is out there. We can all get this information. But when you have the information and then your default is to tell yourself that you aren't entitled to that wholeness. You're not entitled to eat well. You're not entitled to change your mind about the way that you're going to treat your body or to shift your behaviors. You're not allowed to do that because you're Black, because your grandmama did it, or you know what I mean, because people are making fun of you. There's a safe space where you can be healthy, you can be whole. That safe space is right here.
And that's why it has to start with like us, right? The individual, because when you have that internal and subconscious belief about yourself and you're not deserving and these things, then now you transfer that to someone else. And when you see your sister or your cousin or your teacher or whatever, they're trying to live healthier. So when you say these things like you're eating salad or oh you're eating whole foods, there's really this underlying message of like, how dare you? Like, who do you think that you are to go off and better yourself? That's really what is like kind of at the bottom of that. And so I think that's why it starts with me. Like, I have to get better for me. And so when people talk about self-care and, oh, I don't want to be selfish, and kind of having that mindset shift of it's okay to pour into you first before you try to give everything to everyone else. This is a part of it. Like, I have to be well for myself. I have to have my health in check and my mental state in check, so that one, like I said, I don't transfer any like negative beliefs to others around me, but then two, so I can show it fully.
Yeah.
Right. And so I can actually physically be here for my children when they get older and their children, and I'm not bedridden, in the process, or like crippled with disease. And so, like you said, it starts with your intention. What do you want? How do you want to live?
And what's just thinking about what you're saying is there's also this communal, there's this independent, like, this is what I want for myself, but there's also this sense of community that really needs to be built. And I really feel good about where I think we're going as a culture, where you're seeing so many other, like, I think there's Girl Trek where they're like, walk with me, or there's like so many other things that are out here where we are generating a safe space for us to talk about our mental health, our physical health, how we're eating. So I do feel like we're in a different time where we're embracing this. And so I think culturally, we're building communities where there are safe spaces, but I still think there's a lot of work to be done, because we are also, like you said, taking our pain and putting it on other people. And that has to stop as well. We have to be able to recognize when we're the one who is causing other people harm, if we're going to get better as an individual, but also as a community. And I also think, I talk about this a lot in my longevity work, is that there has to be intention. You have to be intentional about wanting to be healthy in this environment. You have to be intentional, because the default is illness, right? So what everybody is saying is normal. What everybody is saying is, like, the people who are looking at you and saying, you're going to eat that salad. That consciousness and that acceptance of eating the way that everybody else around you is eating leads to disease. That is the normal pathway. And it took me a minute to sort of get this fully fleshed out without feeling like you're pointing a finger, right? Because I don't want anybody to ever feel like I'm doing it right and you're doing it wrong, or you should do it my way and my way is the only way. I really try to leave space for people to say there are really a lot of ways of doing things, but there's some basic ground rules that are essential that people have to understand, that if I'm eating a certain way, if I'm following the standard American diet, we also call the SAD diet, right? It is a disease diet. if you are following the standard American lifestyle, which is, mostly sedentary, you're not moving, we're working from desk, we're not paying attention to our mental health, all of those things lead to disease. And so when you're thinking about your life and where you want it to go, you have to be intentional about creating a life of health. If you don't want disease, you can't passively get that. You can't passively live your life the way that everyone else around you is living and not get disease. You can't do that in this environment because our environment is somewhat toxic, right? So it's important for us to sort of understand that we have to be intentional to be healthy. You have to go against the grain to be healthy. You don't you're not defaulting into health. You default into illness when your baseline is the standard American lifestyle. And so I think once people sort of understand that, then they start to think, okay, well, I'm going to have to be strategic, right? I'm going to have to think about, how do I move in a world where people are always trying to tell me the wrong thing? And the wrong thing is the most prevalent and the most common thing.
The loudest.
The loudest. Yeah. And that takes skill. I mean, that sounds crazy to me even saying it. It takes skill. Because, so you just think about it. So you go to the grocery store has nothing, like the majority, 80% of the grocery store has foods that have added sugar in it, right? So if that means for you to figure out what those 20% that doesn't have added sugar, that's a skill. Because everything in the grocery store is telling you right now, oh, eat me, eat me, eat me. And they have little labels on it. It says, I'm healthy, I'm low fat, I'm diet, and so there's all this like misinformation, when you're just going to the grocery store. Like this isn't like a hostile environment, right? Not by nature, right? And you're going there and you have to like navigate through these aisles and be able to figure out what is a whole food, what is processed. That's a skill. Yeah. And that's what I'm always trying to tell people. Like the reason I have a course on it is because it requires some intellect, and you shouldn't have to have a PhD. You don't have to be a doctor to figure out how to eat well. But when you are in an environment where all your options are not healthy, then it does take a little bit of skill. It requires a little of relearning. Not hard. It's really not that difficult. Once you learn the simple things, it's not that hard, but it does require some effort.
Yeah, and it really is the element of you just don't know what you don't know. That's not a bad thing, and it doesn't take a lot to learn it, like you were saying, but you have to make that step to say, you know what, I want to do things differently. I don't even know what I need to do different. Yeah. I just know I don't like how I feel, and I know that everyone around me, their life ends in sickness, and I want something different for myself. Right. So obviously they probably weren't able to teach me the best way. Right. So let me try to go on my own and figure out, okay, what are my next steps? How do I need to move forward? How do I need to re-educate myself? But then it just circles back to that intentionality, deciding to be decided. Yep. That's it.
Well, that's why, and that I also have to try to even remind people, why would anybody need a health coach? Right? It's like, and I think it's because people think we should default to health. We think we don't need to be retaught how to eat. Yeah. But I always tell people, who taught you how to eat? Who taught you how to sleep? Who taught you how to manage stress? Probably no one, right? You probably learned it by just experience, and that didn't necessarily mean it was the right decisions, right? So I learned how to eat from how my mama ate. And she wasn't teaching me anything. She was just like, this is what we're eating tonight. And oftentimes, many of the decisions about what I ate were based off of finances, not based off of health. And so when you think about the context in which people have learned this information about how to eat, how to live, how to sleep, how to manage stress, when you think about the context in which they learned this, you realize that, oh, maybe I need to actually learn it. Like, maybe I need to learn a different way, particularly if I don't want to end up in the same predicament that the people around me are ending up in. And it's hard to see that, particularly when you're young, because you think, oh, I can eat this way forever. And I've been eating like this my whole life. Oh, that's my favorite one. That's my favorite comment from my family members. Oh, you've been eating, we've been eating like this our whole entire life. I fed you that when you were a kid. Yeah. What you have to understand is that disease does not develop overnight. It's not like I'm going to eat a hot dog today and I'm going to be 300 pounds and diabetic tomorrow. That's not how it works. The diabetes, just as a great example, because it is one of those progressive diseases, it starts with 10, 20 years before you actually develop the actual diagnosis of diabetes. And we're actually seeing higher rates of diabetes, higher rates of obesity, higher rates of liver disease because of sugar. So fatty liver disease. We're seeing these in children because now what we're doing is we're taking that standard American lifestyle and we're pushing it. We're starting people earlier, right? Because when we grew up, at least, well, I don't even know if when I grew up, when my mother grew up, her options for processed foods were less. And so for her, it took her, or that generation, 40 years to develop diabetes. Now, you take a kid today who can have those little gushers that you push out, I'm just thinking of like these juice at every meal, French fries as your vegetable for every meal, or you start that at 2 years old, then now your 10 years of eating badly starts at 12. You've hit 10 years at 12 years old. And so now we have diseases that we're seeing that we used to see in 40-year-olds now in 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds. So this idea that, because I ate it, or that, your grandmother ate it, or whatever their excuse is, that doesn't fly. And we have to be able to see a lie when it's right in front of us.
Yeah. And I love that you said that component of a lot of the time our food choices were dictated by price, because that's so true too. Because I was also thinking like what you were exposed to, what you had access to. So certain neighborhoods, they don't have Whole Foods. You don't. That's not even a thing. You have to make a trip, a journey to even know that it's out there and to get there. And not everybody's about to do that.
Yeah.
Like, listen, I got to cook dinner right now. I'm going to the Walmart that is 3 minutes away. I'm going to get what I need to get, and I'm going to come home. So part of that is by design of how they infrastructurally design these communities, right? But that also affects what you have access to is kind of what you default to. And then you add in the element of price and then the convenience, and then it's just it's a whole thing.
Yeah. Flex Focus says food deserts are real, and they are very real. And so one of the things that I also see is happening culturally is that we're starting to talk more about urban gardens. And people are starting to figure out, hey, I have this patch of land that I can grow in. And honestly, from an economical and a social economical standpoint, for some people, that is the solution, right? Like if we wait for there not to be food deserts, then that becomes, again, we're giving away our power, right? Now, having the time to garden and knowing how to garden, that is also a barrier. Like that, there's no doubt about it. But like I said, I always remember, I used to visit my grandmother in Brooklyn, New York. They had a brownstone, and in the backyard there was a driveway that was full of concrete, and right next to the driveway was this little patch of dirt, and in that patch of dirt were collard greens and okra, and so that is a skill. It's a life skill, and it's unfortunate that we don't teach our children how to garden and how to grow their own food. But what that would do is that's not going to give you your full meal. Like, I'm not saying that you've got to go outside and raise chickens and goats and, but I do think that it's one of the steps that we can start to take, particularly in food deserts, that's something we can own. That's something we have complete control over it, that we don't have to wait for other people to give us a handout for that.
Yeah.
So anyway, this has been real.
This has been a good talk. Are there, I guess, any questions before we hop off? I haven't seen any so far.
No, but we will be back next Tuesday. Cocaine in My Cookies, Sugar Detox is coming. So if you have been waiting for that, keep your eyes open. That is next on the docket. And yeah.
Yeah. So next week we should talk about sugar detox then.
Yeah. We should promote it too. So see if we can get some people to give us some questions ahead of time, because that's just always a hot topic. It gets people all riled up because so many people are like, no, I'm for real. I'm addicted to sugar. And I'm like, yeah, you probably are.
Yeah, I know for sure. I used to joke about it, but I was kind of serious. Like, I think I really have a problem.
Yeah.
And then I learned I did.
Yeah.
100% had a problem.
Yeah.
So I'll do some putting some feelers out there. And if y'all have any questions, then please send them to us about sugar detoxing. We'll answer them. We'll talk about it.
Awesome. All right, Chatila.
Have
See
a
you
good
later.
night.
All right, you
Bye.
too. Bye.